What's up everyone, back for another beer review, and today I'll be reviewing yet another beer from the Flying Dog Brewery, and they're out of Frederick, Maryland, and this is their Dead Rise. So they're calling this one an Old Bay Summer Ale, and on the side of the label it says ale brewed with Old Bay seasoning and lemon, comes in at 5.7% alcohol by volume, 25 IBUs, and at the time of review, I don't know exactly how old this can is, but it does have an enjoy by date of September 27th of 2023, and we're about 3.5 months away from that date, so this should be a relatively fresh. Now, full disclosure, I've had this one before. I actually had this back in 2014. I think it was either the first or second year they released this one, at least nationally or regionally, let's just say outside of Maryland, and I strangely enjoyed it. I thought that the Old Bay seasoning kind of worked well in the beer, and I enjoyed it to some degree. I think I'd give it like a 3.5 out of 5 on Untappd. I didn't love it or anything, but I enjoyed it. It was kind of different, kind of unique. I will say that, surprise, surprise, this should pair well with probably seafood. I'd imagine some Maryland blue crab, or, probably some crab in general, lobster, things of that nature. This would probably pair extremely well with that. So I wanted to give it a review because it's been almost 9 years since I've last had it. And yeah, I'm ready to get into it. So I want to say, if you haven't been checking out beer news in the last couple of weeks, you may not have heard that Flying Dog was actually acquired by the FX Matte Brewing Company, aka Saranac, back, I think it was in late May. And they are actually moving their production to Utica, New York, which is the headquarters of FX Matte Brewing. And that's a bummer for Maryland fans. Recently, Duke Claw just got acquired by River Horse, and they're moving all the production to River Horse in New Jersey. So a couple different Maryland breweries leaving, going to different states. Now, to be fair, Flying Dog, I think, originated in Colorado and many years ago moved to Maryland, and now they're moving to New York. So, but if you like Flying Dog and you're in Maryland, that is a bummer. They did say, FX Matt did say that they're going to try to do like a research and development brewery where they do like innovative different beers, but they don't know when that project is even going to begin, if at all. We'll see if that actually comes to fruition. So I just wanted to mention that, though, in this review. So yeah, it has like a cloudy, like lemon juice kind of look to it. Yeah, definitely, I can see my shadow through the glass, but it has a haze to it. About a half finger of a bright white, creamy looking head, honestly. Swirl it up a little bit, you get a decent head, and it definitely has a creaminess to it. Hold it up to the light. Yeah, I mean, it has whether it's a chill haze or just a little bit of cloudiness to it, definitely looks unfiltered to some degree. Now, this used to be referred to as a blonde ale, but now they just call it a summer ale, which doesn't really mean anything because it's not like a real style. A lot of summer ales are wheat beers or wheat ales. Sometimes they're blonde ales, so I don't think that really matters, but I guess summer ale sounds better than if they just put like a wheat ale or something like that. Anyway, let's get a nose on this one. So I remember the Old Bay being very prominent, both in the aroma and the taste, when I had it back in 2014. I'm getting a soft, like general, like seasoned salt kind of nose, but not specifically Old Bay. I'm getting more of the lemon. It has like this bright, like lemonade kind of nose. Not over the top or anything, but it's definitely more noticeable than the Old Bay, which I didn't think was the case. Getting a slight graininess, of like almost a biscuity-esque malt character. But there's not a ton going on. A little bit of that Old Bay seasoning that's coming off more as like a generic seasoned salt. There is a nice bright kind of lemonade sweetness. And then again, biscuity malt character. There's not much past it. There's like 3 things going on. Doesn't smell bad or anything. It just doesn't smell all that exciting. I will say the one in 2014 smelled a bit better. So anyway, let's get into it. Cheers, everyone. Oh, okay. So I will say this. I always be honest with my reviews all the time. And I will say the one 2014 was a little bit more intense with the Old Bay seasoning and a little bit more noticeable. This is more subtle and nuanced, but the finish definitely gives you that Old Bay kind of seasoning finish. It has like that drying spice character. But I think the lemon's more prominent than I remember. And I don't actually, be honest with you, I don't remember if in 2014 this one was brewed with lemon. It might have been, I just don't remember. But anyway, let's go back for another sip. Buying this one's not like super watery and light. This is like almost medium body, like lower side of medium body. 5.7%, that's pretty good. The mouthfeel, while it has a nice crispness to it, this has a mild to moderate carbonation. It's not over the top in terms of the carbonation. It has more of like a smooth and almost slightly creamy profile. It's a little bit softer than I anticipated. Yeah, mouthfeel is real nice. I actually enjoy that. And a lot of times, you know, I prefer if I'm drinking, and I don't really drink beer with food a lot. I'm not one of those people that love pairing it. But when I do, a lot of times I, you know, pick something that has a little bit more carbonation and it just seems to work well. I don't know. I feel like this would still work extremely well despite being a little bit softer, smooth, and even a hint of creaminess. The taste, very simplistic. Again, subtle, nuanced, not as complex as I remember. Like, again, it wasn't super complex. It's just, it seemed like the Old Bay was kind of leading the way back 9 years ago when I had that bottle of it. And this one, it's not. It's more of like accentuating the rest of the beer, which probably works better. You probably don't want this to just be drenched in Old Bay seasoning, unless you love Old Bay seasoning, but even so, I don't think you'd want that. Forefront, I get like biscuity malt, a little bit of like a honey, passes through, the lemon hits, and again, it's lemonade. It's not like, it's lemonade in terms of like, this isn't like super acidic and tart like a lemon juice. It has more like a little bit of that mixed in with a little bit of sweetness, that biscuity honey thing going on. So it has like more of a lemonade approach to it. And then on the finish, that's where the beer kind of dries out. This is a semi to almost full on dry finish. And it has that lingering Old Bay kind of, to me, seasoning that I'm picking up on. It doesn't have any real bitterness, to be honest with you. And no real like hop character to speak of. I think they're relying more on the dryness from the Old Bay seasoning, or that dryness in conjunction with the Old Bay seasoning kind of stop it from being too sweet. This does lean a little bit sweeter. I think I want a little bit more bitterness, or maybe like a full-on super dry finish to kind of balance it out a little bit more. But again, they're brewing this one specifically to pair with food, and most likely seafood. So I think this would go really well with some, and I'm not a big seafood guy. Like, I don't dislike crab or lobster, but like I don't eat it a lot. I do like me some shrimp. I could see this pairing with a lot of different seafoods, maybe even like clam chowder or some kind of like soup, like hearty soup. I think this would go extremely well. And I think probably a lot of folks in Maryland pick this one up every summer and spring and drink it when they have like a seafood boil, or you know, making up some Maryland blue crab or whatever the case may be. And I think that's kind of what this is made for. So drinking it on its own, and it goes for a lot of different beers where you're like, you know, certain styles where like you drink that style with a certain food or in a certain situation. When you sit down and just dissect a beer like this, and I notice this for a lot of adjunct lagers and a lot of just like old school American adjunct lagers, those beers are usually consumed quite a few times in a you know, short period of time, you know, at a sporting event, at a barbecue, poolside, at a, you know, just whatever, a picnic, whatever the case may be, right? Or a big get-together gathering of some sort. So to sit down and like dissect adjunct lager that people just drink by the 6-packs, 12-packs, 30-packs, it's kind of different. That's the same case for this beer. It's like, I think this is a pairing with seafood beer, and to kind of just sit and drink on its own is kind of not what it's really meant for. But I will say, I like this as much as I did back in 2014. I think that was a little bit more abrasive and strange and weird. This is more approachable and interesting from a standpoint that I get the Old Bay seasoning, but I think the base beer is pretty solid. It just doesn't have a lot of complexity and is definitely meant for food. So anyway, probably be a little bit of a longer review. I apologize, but you guys know I like to ramble on, and I wanted to talk about the sale and so on and so forth. But I have no issues giving this beer right here, Dead Rise, the Old Bay Summer Ale. I'm going to give this, I gave it a 3.5 back in 2014. I'm going to go a little bit higher. I think I like it a little bit more as far as the beer goes, but I'm not going to go much higher. So I'm going to give this actually a high 3.5. I'm going to go with 3.6 out of 5. Now, you might think that's a low score, but I would say if you pair this with some kind of seafood or some kind of just like really seasoned meat in general, this is probably into like the 3.75 range, maybe like 3.8 range for me. I think it's a nice beer to pair with food. 8 times I've said that. I don't know, probably not even, probably more like, I don't know, 15 times I said that in this review. Anyway, price point availability in my neck of the woods, I think this was like $10.99 a 6-pack. It might be a little different where you are, but probably like 11, 12 bucks for a 6-pack, which is fine. And availability, it's Flying Dog. Wherever you see Flying Dog, you probably should see this one, although you might not. This is, again, like their spring, summer release. And, you know, I know a lot of people have already had this one before in prior years, but if you get Flying Dog stuff, there's a pretty good chance you get this one, so be on the lookout for it. I don't know their distro. They probably get throughout like the mid-Atlantic up through the Northeast, maybe even a little bit down south, maybe a little bit into the Midwest, but Flying Dog doesn't get like crazy distro, but they get, I think, pretty decent distro. So anyway, if you've had this one before, whether it's this year's release or prior releases, let me know what you think about it. Also, if you've ever paired this one with seafood or any kind of food in general, how did it go? I might have to buy a can or two, maybe pair this with something at some point. I don't know if I will, because like I said, it's a solid, decent beer. I don't, dislike it. I don't love it, but again, I think this is a beer meant to be paired with food, and it's I'm kind of out of my element, out of its element per se, doing just a standalone review, but it is what it is. Anyway, appreciate everybody stopping by for another beer review here on the Beer Patrol. 5.7%. You really can't taste it, and I didn't think I would. So anyway, to the next one. Cheers.